Europe, we are all talking about the digital innovation hub era, and we have a lot of expectation about it. And probably this panel we will be able to see what the experts are telling us that is will happen in the short time and in the future and in the long term, and also what are we as a user of this new facility are expecting about them. So in that sense, and with us we have Anne-Marie Sassen, acting head of the unit of digital transformation of industrial ecosystems of the European Commission. I think she's online already with us. Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. You are there for being here with us and for your time. We also have with us Jordi Linares, subdirector general de digitalización de la industria y entornos colaborativos. Thank you very much also for being here with us. He is leading all of us in Spain in this process. We also have with us Roberto Fraile, councillor at the Ayuntamiento of Alcobendas. Thank you very much also for being here with us. She's a referent in innovation in Spain and for everything they do. Thank you for being here with all of us. And we have Carlos José Bernardos, Vice President of Fictonic and Professor at the University Carlos III of Madrid. Thank you also for being here. And to moderate this meeting, we have Javier Parra. Thank you for the DIGIS3 from Castilla y León, which is a digital innovation hub that is a joint force between most of the digital innovation hubs in the region of Castilla and León. So thank you very much, and please I give the floor to Javier to introduce the topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. Thank you for the introduction. And Anne-Marie, it's your turn. Okay?
Okay.
I help you with the skip the slide. Okay?
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to the panel, and also thank you for organizing the panel. So I want to explain why we are setting up the network of European digital innovation hubs. So if you go to the next slide. Recently, the Commission has published a communication which is called the 2030 Digital Compass, or the 2030 Digital Decade, and it uses a compass as a metaphor, and it has 4 cardinal points, this compass, and one of them is also the uptake of digital technologies by businesses. And if you look to the table, you can see what the ambitions are. So for the uptake of cloud, the uptake of big data, and the uptake of artificial intelligence, we want that by 2030, 75% of all companies are using it. Whereas at this moment in time, well, it's only 26% of companies using the cloud, 14% that have at least a basic level of digital intensity. So they use at least the basic digital technologies. There we want to reach 90% of all companies. So that would be virtually all companies. And at the moment we are at 61%. So to reach these targets, we, if you go to the next slide, we are also investing in digital capacities in Europe. And these digital, that is done through the Digital Europe program. That's a new program, so it's at the same level as Horizon Europe, which you all know probably very well. So this is new, and it really invests in digital capacity that we need. For instance, it invests in the area of high-performance computing to make sure that Europe has the best supercomputers to use. It invests in the area of artificial intelligence, cloud, and data. where we want to make available resources that innovators in the field of AI can use to develop their algorithms and to find solutions to the societal challenges that we are facing. And we are also investing in cybersecurity because, of course, we cannot make the digital transitions without also making sure that we have enough protection against cyber criminals. Further, we have advanced digital skills, and then we have also a pillar called deployment and best practices, which is to make sure that we also use all these digital capacities everywhere. So if we go to the next slide, we see here the structure of Digital Europe program, and the yellow horizontal bars, they are again the 4 areas that we have in which we are investing in digital capacity. And then you see the 2 blue arrows cutting across, and one of them is the European Digital Innovation Hubs. And the idea is that the European Digital Innovation Hubs should then support all companies everywhere in Europe with the uptake of these and also other digital technologies which they need for their digital transformation. So if we go to the next slide. So we saw the targets in 2030, and we saw that we want to reach 75% of all companies using cloud and AI and big data. But that's a European average. If we look a little bit deeper, we see that there are really differences in the uptake of digital technologies. So it really depends where a company is located, what the sector is where the company is working in, and also what the size of the company is, how much it is making use of digital technologies. For instance, if I compare small and medium-sized enterprises with large enterprises, we see that only 25% of SMEs are using digital technologies or are highly digitized, so they use, let's say, quite a bit of digital technologies, where there is 62% of large enterprises that is doing that. And also, if you look, for instance, in the countries, then we can see that in Denmark, 53% of Danish companies are highly digitized, and only 6% of Greek companies are highly digitized. So, if we go to the next slide, we of course want to diminish these differences, because these are digital gaps which they shouldn't be there. All companies should be benefiting from digital technologies, and in order to make sure that is possible, we want to build a network of 200 European digital innovation hubs, and these digital innovation hubs, they are also geographically spread all over Europe, and they will support the SMEs, but also public sector organizations with their digital transformation. And they will provide services which is based on a specific expertise or focus that they have selected and in which they are good, and which also is important for the local companies that they are using. So, for instance, if I take a digital innovation hub in Greece, it would be different than the one in Denmark, because in Denmark, most companies are already highly digitized, and in Greece not. So you need to adapt the offer. They will make available relevant experimentation facilities, because if we look to the right-hand side of the slide, you can see the 4 types of services that digital innovation hubs should provide. And the first one is test before invest. And with that we mean that companies, before they want to really buy a certain digital product or service, they want to understand what that means for their company, how they can work with that. So the Digital Innovation Hub supports companies with testing and experimentation with certain digital technologies. For instance, they could use a robot for a month or so in their own production process and then see what the advantages are that it brings. If then that is a useful, if it's considered a positive effect, then the company can decide to invest in it further. And the Digital Innovation Hub should help them to find follow-up investment. For instance, by giving contacts with local banks who would know that if the company has already worked with the Digital Innovation Hub, they already understand what the return on investments are, so that this company is also mature enough then to get the loan and the risks will be diminished. The third function of the Digital Innovation Hub is also to build an innovation ecosystem and to make sure companies are networked, because companies cannot innovate alone. They need also other companies, and this will be done first at the local scale. So the Digital Innovation Hub need to do a kind of scouting of technology providers that are available. They could, for instance, look what are the robot providers in our neighborhood, which could work with that company that needs a robot. So then that robot will be placed in the company. The two companies will work together to customize the product further if needed. And then also, if then later the company decides to buy more of those robots, it's of course a win-win situation for both of them. And it makes their relationship stronger, and in the future they can then also continue to innovate together. And then the fourth function is around skills and training, because if you introduce new digital technologies into your company, of course all the people in the company need to have the digital skills to also work with that technology, and for instance to reprogram the robots whenever that would be necessary. So the typical participants of European Digital Innovation Hubs are research and technology organizations or technical universities, but then they work very closely together with industry associations who really have to contact with the companies, who understand the needs of these companies and who can help to make sure that the right offer of services is developed. They should also work together with accelerators and incubators, for instance, to do the technology scouting and to offer opportunities to startups, innovation agencies, and vocational training institutes for the skills and training services. Can we go to the next slide? So we will build this network of 200 European Digital Innovation Hubs. They are always near a company. They will provide the support in the local language, which is very important. And they will also do an active outreach, because it's not the companies who are not investing yet in digital, they are also not likely to find you through the internet, or they don't themselves are aware that they have this need for making more use of digital technology. So an active outreach is required. As I said, they will build regional ecosystems of users and suppliers, so they will really strengthen the local innovation environment. But then they also connect to the whole of Europe through the network. And one important aspect of this being part of the network is that they can learn from other hubs and also share their best practices with other hubs. So if two digital innovation hubs are, one of their specializations is, for instance, 5G or the introduction of 5G, making sure that companies develop services with 5G. Then all the hubs of the 200 who are also working on 5G, they could, share best practices together on how they are approaching that, and that will make each of these hubs better. And what they can also do, that's also a very important effect. We were talking about the local ecosystem, but through the networking, this can be replicated at the European level. So if there is no good local supplier at the local level, there might be one in another region, in the ecosystem of another digital innovation hub. And then those two can be put together, and that then will create new European value chains. And then the final task of the Digital Innovation Hub is then to disseminate these digital capacities of the Digital Europe program to the local community. So if there are companies who could benefit from the high performance computing actions, then the local Digital Innovation Hub can teach them how to make use of that, and that can bring them a big competitive advantage. So if we go to the next slide. So we have a two-step selection process, and in the first step, the countries, because we are investing together with the countries in the member states of the European Union into this whole network. And in the first step, the member states, they have pre-selected candidate entities. Spain has also done that. And in total, we have now 337 candidate entities, and only these candidate entities are allowed to participate in the call, which we just have opened recently at the European level, where then, out of these 337, we will select 200, which will make up a balanced network, which is regionally covering all regions of Europe, but also covering all the sectors and digital technologies that we need to support the digital transformation of the economy. And on this slide, what you see are the different specializations which these 337 candidates have. And you see that they are really a wide range of technologies: artificial intelligence, high-performance computing, cybersecurity, but also Internet of Things, 5G, and also addressing the different sectors, the different economic sectors that we have, like agri-food, but also, for instance, tourism and social care. So if you go to the next slide. So we expect the network to start in 2022. And here on this slide, you see the catalog of candidate European Digital Innovation Hubs. So you see a graphical overview. And in Spain, there are 40 candidate hubs. And the budget allocated to Spain gives space for maximum 17 European Digital Innovation Hubs. So in Spain, there will be a real competition among all the candidate hubs, but all the ones who also are above the threshold, so they have the necessary quality to be a European Digital Innovation Hub, but in case we cannot fund them, they will receive a seal of excellence, and that means that if they find other alternative sources of funding, they can also become a European Digital Innovation Hub and be a full member of the network. Can we go to the next slide? So this is my final slide. So we really believe this will work, because we are the European Union, member states and regions. We are investing in the same support structures. So that means that we are also using all this support structure for all the policies that we have to help SMEs to digitalize. So it's really accumulation of resources on the same action, so the impact will be bigger. And then what we also believe is very important, that it's not one size fits all for every European Digital Innovation Hub, but that they can use their own entrepreneurial spirit, their own understanding of what companies need, adapt local best practices, and that way provide the best services to their local stakeholders. Can we go to the next one? This is just a slide where there are links with more information. And I want to say, if there are any candidate European Digital Innovation Hub in the room now, on Tuesday we will have another webinar where we will answer your questions on how to apply to the call for proposals at the European level. So thank you very much. Javier, over to you.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie, I have one question for you. What about the future of industrial and digital development? What about your vision of this future?
So the vision that the European Commission has is that we need to respond to the Green Deal. We need to become more sustainable. So for industry, that means that they need to go into circular production. They need to adopt other business models where maybe not everybody owns all the products, but we use them whenever needed. And also that we get better interconnection between industries to use the waste of one as an input resource for others. All those actions, they will require digital technologies in order to be able to realize them. So we see the digital and the green transition as one transition. We call it the twin transition, and that will be driving the industrial development for the next 10 years. And you've seen the goals that we have then for the digital transition. For instance, I didn't say that for 5G, we would really expect that by 2030, in all populated areas in Europe, 5G would be available. We also expect, for instance, that in 2030 we have one quantum computer. At the moment we have zero, but then there would be really one quantum computer in.
It's important sustainable development, and it's Jordi's time. And I want to know what is your vision on the incorporation of the so-called digital transformation in today's industry world.
Well, thank you very much for your question. First of all, I'd like to, I'm so grateful to be here with IEEE Society and GLOBECOM. It's really an honor to be here. Well, for us, for the government of Spain, from the Ministry of Industry, I think its awareness is the most important thing for the industry and for digitizing the industry. Why? The problem we had before the pandemic, before the COVID-19, was that digitization was not in the agenda of the industrial companies. And for us, it was really challenging having trying to promote the programs we have in order to give subsidies or to give credits to the companies to have these projects, these digitizing projects. And right now, the pandemic and the situation is it was awful on the one side, but on the other hand, it was really it was an enabler for the companies to realize that digitization was not an option; it was a necessity, and there's something that we've been looking. We knew it from 6 years until now that we are experimenting at this point in Europe, in the Western countries, that all the companies from in the late 80s, 90s, they went to Southeast Asia. Right now, they are coming back to Europe, coming back to the Western countries, but the way they are coming back here is not by using in a very intensive way labor, but they are using digitizing technologies. We can get into these into examples of this, like digital twins, or maybe big data or artificial intelligence techniques that are evolving the way the software is done, and how the 5G is going to be is key. For example, for artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence basics are the same, like from Marvin Minsky in the 60s. But the difference between right now and the 60s, it was computing, the capacity of the processors, and also the networks. And there's something that is that at this point, and from 6 years, I would say the term of Industry 4.0 was still 10 years ago, actually, the Hannover Messe from Acatec, the academy, the German academy. And the fact is that these possibilities right now are reality because of these two elements. Marie was talking about high performance computing. The next generation of computing will be not only on quantum technologies, but also on photonics, are key for this evolution. And I know that it was not in the agenda of this. We knew that it was not in the agenda of the big companies, and right now they are in the agenda of these, not big companies, but industrial companies from all sizes. And that's, for us, is the key element. Then we have a bunch of, with the next generation funds, we have an even more bunch of programs available for the companies, and we'd like to talk in the future about this.
Okay, thank you, Jordi. Carlos, you have
to complement what my colleagues here have been discussing from the 5G point of view, which is the one I'm closer to. So I strongly believe, and I strongly agree with what you said, that digitalization now is, you can say, is a must, like something that companies may do. I believe that COVID-19 has also taught us there is going to be a necessity in order to be competitive and to evolve. And I strongly believe that in the industrial manufacturing area, data-driven is going to be a key component. And data-driven means collecting data, and there we need connectivity, and processing data, and there we need AI. And in order to connect the data where the data needs to be processed, which will be huge amounts of data, and then be able to process that probably in the network itself, closer to where the data is produced. Connectivity in general, 5G and the evolution in 6G, the next year will be key. So I strongly believe that this is a movement that companies need to do and are doing. And it's not only about small or big companies, it's about all companies. And it's also important from our experience in past projects, that some of these companies, they need to learn about how to do it. They know they want to do it, but sometimes they don't know yet how to do it. And this is where all these digital industries, digital hubs, innovation hubs will be very important, because there is a component also in training companies on how to use the new technologies. And I think this is a key component of this digital innovation hub.
Well, you were talking about keys like 5G, for example. And not only keys, again, I would like to ask Anne-Marie, what is the consistency of the current technological map of the European Union? What is your conclusion about this consistency?
Well, in Digital Europe program, this is the first time the Commission is investing in digital capacities, really. And the key digital technologies that are recognized in this program are artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and high-performance computing, because we see them as the basis for all applications that we need, that companies will need to make themselves more efficient, and also to make them more competitive, but also to make them use less resources for the Green Deal. So those are the three key technologies. But then, of course, if you look at the slide which I presented for the targets for the 2030 digital decade, 5G, of course, gigabit coverage everywhere. We also want to be able to produce more semiconductors in Europe. That's very important, because if we want to be, we need some sovereignty in Europe, or autonomy to be able to produce what we need in Europe, also by ourselves. If there is more digital, it means more semiconductors are needed in all types of digital products, and Europe should not be dependent on only one or two suppliers in the world to provide us the chips we need. We also need to be able to produce them ourselves sufficiently. So that is now something where, for instance, the Commission is looking into how we can improve this, and then how we can double the share of global production of chips in Europe by 2030.
Okay, thank you. I think so that this consistency is allowed by bringing on efficiency. Okay, well, Roberto, I would like to know what you think about the Commission's primary industrial needs and support.
I would like to thank the invitation to be here. And, I would say that Alcobendas is one of the most important cities in Spain in terms of economic development. And we strongly believe that what the industry needs, because we are in contact with many companies every day, that we have to push innovation. And that's the primary thing that I will say. We have to invest in things like AI or 5G, 3D printing, the high or the big trends in industry. And what Anne-Marie was saying, I think is very important. We have to push or try to produce technology here in Europe, and it is not an easy thing. We are working in a project, and in a big project in Alcobendas, and it is not easy because there's a lot of components to try to produce things in Europe again, and at the same time we have to see that there's a lot of investment in the States and in China in terms of technology, and that's why I think Digital Europe is an important element, because Europe has to react and invest in technology and innovation.
Carlos, are you agree with this conclusion?
I feel agree that we need to push for innovation. We as Phytonic, I also take the opportunity to introduce Phytonic, which is a co-creation and innovation laboratory, open laboratory funded by Telefónica and the India Networks Institute. We are basically there to provide an ecosystem for innovation. So our goal is to foster innovation, to provide the right ecosystem, to basically bring together the required stakeholders to work in that innovation. So we have like technology creators or developers or companies, like we have telcos, we have manufacturers, we have smaller companies, and we also have the academics to be able to attract final customers of the technology. For example, if we talk about Industry 4.0, we have companies like ASTI, that is a Spanish company that is doing robotics, mobile robotics, recently acquired by IFEMA, a very large company. And they are there testing their innovations for Industry 4.0, how to autonomously how to enable autonomous connectivity driving for the small robots that are in the factories and for logistics. So we really think that we need to push for this innovation in order to be competitive in the future. So this is our goal, to be an ecosystem to foster that innovation.
Well, Jordi, primary industrial needs, support in Spain. What do you think of this question?
Well, there's something that Anne-Marie said, and it was really interesting, because something that we are running on a unit is the semiconductors crisis and the semiconductors programs we are running. Actually, we're leading the IPCIs, the important project for common European interest. But we need to understand how does the administration work in Europe. In general terms, we cannot give money not even us, also the local the local ones. I mean, not the state or the regions or the local communities. We have the regulation. We have two main regulations in Spain or in Europe that we cannot give subsidies to anyone because it would be state aids, and that's illegal. And we have several examples of fines in across the last 20 years on fines in several countries and several companies, and this is this framework is quite complicated because we have a challenge for this 70,000 million euros that we are going to. We have subsidies, but not also on subsidies, but also on procurement. It's very, very complicated because of this. Because we cannot give this money for investments. We can give this money for research and innovation and development and innovation. And from these basics, we have these IPCIs that we can give. We can put money. We can put funds on investments, on capital, on capex, not on OPEX, not over operational expenditures, but on capital expenditures. And that's a key element for the semiconductors industry. That's a key element for the semiconductors industry, not only in Spain, not only Europe, but also in Spain. And we are trying to align the different ecosystems that we are having in Europe. There's two that having fabulous companies are the reality. That maybe in a midterm, 5 years, we will have semiconductors factories in Europe. We have several ones in Germany, and we're mostly in Germany and Ireland also, but maybe in Spain. Focus on, for example, we were talking before on photonics. Photonics is one of the elements. I know from 5G you know about this technique. But from primary, we were, like I said before, we were focused on reshoring. We were focused on reshoring and also underpinning the factors we have here in Spain, and how we can reshore using these advisories, using these elements that digital innovation hub should be this cornerstone for the companies in order to know what to do and how to do it. And having this roadmap is a key element for the companies and for primary companies and for this industrial sector that we have in the last crisis. We discovered that the industrial sector, it was more resilient than this from other sectors, like for example tourism or sectors that they were more intensive on people, they're more intensive in terms of job creation, but these jobs were not intellectual. The intensiveness of this intellectual use, it was not like, for example, the industry sector or the technology sector. And this is also one of the points that we are having, and this is one of the main things that the Digital Innovation Hub should focus: how to transform, how to design this roadmap for the companies in order to underpin these companies here in Spain, and also attract and create these collaborative platforms to attract these investors out this investment for Spain.
Okay, thank you. Carlos, deepening in this concept, in your opinion, what would be the main support offered by the European Digital Innovation Centers to the European technology industry?
Yes, sorry. So basically, taking Jordi's point, I think that, and also from Factoric perspective, there are three pillars where the Digital Innovation Hubs should help. One is what I think is commonly referred to test before invest. So I think we need to have a platform where companies can test the key technologies they plan to integrate into the systems, into the procedures, before actually doing the investment. This needed to gain the skills, the capabilities, and also learn in the process before actually taking that to the actual field. And here in Factory, we have past experience. We have been doing many projects, mainly European projects, with companies like we have been involved in the 3 end-to-end testing platform projects from the European Commission Horizon 2020, 5D and 5 Genesis, and there we were doing many things. But for example, we were testing use cases related to Industry 4.0, digital twinning, these kind of things, and that allowed to test the technology to find what we needed to change or evolve or improve, and then go to the actual factories to do the testing. And for example, we have also another project called 5 Growth, where we have 4 use cases, but 2 of them, one of them was on Industry 4.0 in Spain and in Italy, and we were doing a lot of testing, learning, characterization in factory before going to the actual factory. So actually, as we are here, as we speak, they are doing tests in the Basque Country, in the valley, related to ATVs and to metrology and how to enhance the procedures through 5G and use of data. So I think that this test before invest is one of the key items. The other one is to be able to provide also the digital training necessary to the companies. At the end of the day, digitalization not only involves the companies to actually put the technology into place, but also to train the people to use that. And there are different procedures now. Things are done quite different now as they will be probably being done in the future. So we need to provide that training on the technologies to the different workforce that is involved in the factories. In Factory, there we also have some experience. We have, for example, we have been leading a master program on NFV and 5G technologies. And I think that's something that also digital innovation hubs should do, provide this digital training to the final users. And the last point that we have been also discussing a lot here is about providing this digital ecosystem where SMEs and other companies can try their use cases and see if they are feasible and if 5G or AI or whichever technology you want to bring in is sufficient and can be used. And there, again, in Factory, we have a lot of experience with many use cases, not only in the area of Industry 4.0, we have been doing many other things, like for example, even in the area of emergencies and health with some, we have been doing a lot of things. And I strongly believe that digital innovation hubs should be also key in growing this ecosystem as I mentioned. For me, those are the 3 points.
Thank you, Carlos. Roberto?
Yes. Julia, I think, was talking about an important thing. We are seeing the regulation. We are seeing the problems to use the money from the next gen funds in the ministries and local institutions. It's not being easy using this money because we have a lot of regulation, as Jordi was saying. But the question, one of the things that I think it's very important in the digital innovation hub is that we made the changes that are needed in the regulation in order to the digital innovation hubs can work without so many steps in the regulation that we already have. Probably changes in the regulation. People with the ones I've been talking last months all say that we probably need some changes in regulation, some easy things in order to can use all the money that's coming from Europe in the next years. And it's not being easy because there's so many procedures actually that make that we are working very slowly. I hope that it's not the same case from digital innovation hubs, but we'll see because it's not an easy thing. And another thing I think it was saying Carlos about training. I totally agree about the need of reskilling and upskilling in all all the workers. We have this problem in Alcobendas with a lot of people that is not paying part of the market, employment market, because of this, because not having these digital skills. So we joined the Pact for Skills, well, and another European Commission program, in order to be part of this change, because we need help in terms of training and digital skills.
I don't know if you have any conclusions.
From my side, I mean, in a nutshell, I would say that actually the same thing that I was saying. I said in the beginning, it was like awareness is a key element. Right now, we have the awareness, definitely. Second thing I would say is what we were talking about, the skills. The skills are a key element. We're experimenting a dramatic change on the labor, on the companies. And the skills, and the digital skills are a key element. And actually, the skills are not in case, I would say, in time. And how does it, and what's the difference? The difference is that we need to be a reskill and upskill every 2-3 years. And we can be an engineer, but even though every 3 years we have to work in some specific areas, we need to be reskill and upskill more or less 2-3 years. With 2-3 years, and there's a key point. And I'd like to talk about the test before invest that Carlos was talking before. It was something of the allocation of funds that we are going to have in the ministry for the next generation, focus on digital innovation hubs, will be on this, will be on test before invest, because this is key element. Skills for me, my point of view, is the first thing. There's something that from the ministry, labor ministry, and also from the education ministry, they're working together and they're doing a very, very hard work on this. And from the Ministry of Industry, I would say that the test before invest are the key element. In a nutshell, I would say that these 3 points, or these 2 points, skills and test before invest, are the 2 parts or the 2 key elements from the digital innovation hubs.
Okay, thank you. I was working some notes and kind of keyboard maps. Okay, it's photonics, a clear map, keys like 5G, Green Deal, efficiency, but syndemic, not pandemic, syndemic is important, and reskill and upskilling in the companies or in the organization. And a final thought leads me to highlight the importance for the economic and industrial development of the Eurozone of initiatives such as the Digital Innovation Hub, which underline the strength and the cohesion of European industry. It's very important, consistency, cohesion. And in particular, Spanish industry, and keep it at the forefront. I think it's very important. This is my final conclusion. And well, ending, it's my pleasure to stay with you here in Madrid, GLOBECOM, and thank you very much for your participation. Thank you, Jordi. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Roberto. And thank you, Carlos.